Can you help us understand, with Someone Investments, what is the gap that you recognized and that you were trying to close by bringing Someone Investments to life?
I think for us, when we started Someone Investments, the thinking around it was to answer the question that we thought many Stokvels were asking, at least they were asking us, was where can we invest? Like, we want to grow our money, where can we invest? I think oftentimes there's a misconception that Stokvels don't want to invest or that they're not interested in investing. But what we realized by being in business for 5 years now is that actually there wasn't an appropriate product for Stokvels to invest. So that's the gap that we are trying to fill, is by helping Stokvels transition from savings and consumption into investments. And we're doing that by investing in small businesses that are in our communities. So we're circulating the capital from Stokvels back into Stokvel communities. Your Stokvel has a 12 months journey, your investments with us has a 12 months journey. And we get to, be with you from the beginning in January, and then at the end of the year when you're buying groceries, we're there. When you are helping, your kids go to school with the money that you're cashing out on, we're there. So we're just part of the Stokvel journey. We're seeing people, for the first time, we actually have a Stokvel where the couple were able to get married, through the funds that they were able to save and invest with us, So so we get to be part of all of these big moments that Stokvels have. We're not changing anything, we're just saying, we'll give you a little bit more, and you can do whatever it is that your Stokvel was set out to do in the first place.
Thank you, Kurula. I think I also want to ask you to give one maybe major example that you've seen major success in you working with Stokvels, and then also talk about where do you see Someone Investments evolving, or how do you see it evolving over the next 5 years, particularly looking at the product offering that you give for Stokvels in the context of investing?
Definitely, and I think Mambusi touches on it very well in the book, is that we see ourselves as almost the venture capital of Stokvels, right? We want small businesses in townships and rural areas, when they're thinking of where can we get money, we want them to think of us. And we want Stokvels, when they're thinking of investing, to think of us, And it's actually come up quite interestingly enough to be like, okay, but then if you guys have all of these businesses and you have all of these Stokvels, you've basically have built a crowdfunding platform where Stokvels can invest in small businesses and small businesses can get money from Stokvels. So the thinking is, everyone asks, when are you guys going to try and list on the JSE? And then it was, no, we're going to create our own, but for the township and rural market, and for everyday people to be able to put money in the businesses in the townships. And these are very high profile township businesses. I know sometimes when people hear township businesses, they almost get nervous. Our businesses are like the cream of the crop,
Yes.
Some of them are exporting their products abroad. Some of them are making millions in revenue. These are not, township businesses can do this. Township businesses can have tech, they can have AI. There's one business that we funded in Soweto, they provide 3D printed prosthetics and they're supplying their products to government.
Hopefully we get some more questions on someone later. I'm going to introduce our next panelist, Nontokozo Mapumulo. Nontokozo is a dynamic leader in the Stokvel space. She is the co-founder of Jan Riches Stokvel, a platform dedicated to financial empowerment and wealth building through collective saving and investment. She is passionate about the growth and sustainability of Stokvels. She is here to share her insights and experience. Welcome, Nontokozo. Nontokozo, what is Jan Riches? And what inspired the journey to start with Jan Riches Stokvel?
Thank you very much. Firstly, I'm very honored to be here tonight, and I want to share how I got to be in this room tonight. I'm hoping this mic is audible, because So I posted about our 10-year anniversary on LinkedIn, and the reason why I posted about our 10-year anniversary was because we had just surpassed R1 million as a collective, as money that we have saved. And it was a milestone that was so huge for us that I believe that it was LinkedIn worthy to be shared. And so that's how Gurula then spotted me. And because I believe she was trying to build a network within the Stokvel space, we then met for coffee. She then had an investor dinner where I met Umambusi. And then that's how I ended up as part of the book. So this is how I ended up to be in this room. And I wanted to acknowledge that, to say that, you know what, with both ladies, thank you. So to answer your question around what Jan Riches is, the year was 2013. I had just started a job. I met my best friend Rianda, who we were a part of the and co-founder. We had just started the graduate program, and by January 2014, we were broke, and we were part of the statistic, something that we had noticed happening around us as we were growing up, and it became like a phenomenon people were proud of, to say, yo, I'm broke, mochanawari, yo, I'm broke, mochanawari. And I didn't understand why we have to settle for that, especially because we've got tools in place for us to save. And we had opened savings accounts when we started working, but we saved and we dipped into those savings. We saved and we dipped into those savings, and we never put those savings back in there again. I couldn't believe, in fact, I was embarrassed that I was part of the statistic of people that are broke in January. So I called her up, I'm like, babes, how's it looking over there? Do you have money for January? And she didn't, and I called Ubu Tumelo, who's also in the room, and a couple of other friends that we then decided, you know what? It's not because of a lack of financial products that we are not saving. We do save, but you dip into your own savings. So let's hold each other accountable to save. And so we saved as a collective in order for us to not be broke in January. That's why it's called Jan Riches, because we are never broke in January. So in the first year, we saved around 21,000 rands, which helped alleviate whatever pressure that came with January. But as of 2025, we paid out 2.5 million rands to our savings. So we've grown in leaps and bounds. We're sitting with, at that time, it was around 134 members that we have. But that is what Jan Riches is and what it has grown to become.
So what would you say have been the challenges that Jan Riches has faced from 21,000 rands payout to a 2.5 million rands payout? I'm sure somewhere in between things happened. So if you could shed some light on what were some of those challenges and how you overcame them as a collective.
So the first challenge, whenever I get asked this question, the first challenge that comes to mind was exactly how the Stokvel was created. So I reached out to a group of friends who knew me and trusted me. Yes. And so it was very easy to go shopping for the bank that would give us the most amount of interest in my personal capacity, because they know who Nontogozo is and where she lives. But the Stokvel became such a huge success that the people wanted to invite their loved ones. But now these loved ones had to almost trust that, you say you know this Nontogozo person, but I don't. So, okay, fine, I'll save because I know you. But then the circle grew bigger and bigger. Now it was friends and friends of friends. And I didn't want them to rely on trust transfer, which we had because we are reliable, transparent, and we always are consistent. But it started becoming a challenge now because, firstly, I do want you to trust the process, not Nontogozo. So we started now to need an official Stokvel account that is going to need more than one signatory, which means that there's a safety in the process in itself, right? Yeah. Then there's the challenge of being a digital Stokvel as a millennial, where the financial institutions that we have today aren't really recognizing us as well as we would like them to. And so even the products that we are being offered in the market is sort of something that's either taken from a business banking product range or personal banking. They put lipstick on it and then they call it a Stokvel product. Actually, it isn't designed for us. So I go to a branch purely because I have a Stokvel. And I hate it so much, but it's only because the industry isn't recognizing us with the power and the needs that we actually have as a Stokvel. So that's a challenge. In fact, I wrote my thesis in that, and I touched on a couple of that to say that the industry isn't recognizing us as much as it should. And one of the other challenges now, specifically to Jan Riches, is growth. So we grow by word of mouth. In fact, I remind us of Capitec. At some point, Capitec wasn't spending so much on their marketing because it was actually word of mouth. People are so happy with saving their own money that they are wanting their loved ones to join. And so now we are growing at such an exponential rate that we aren't able to handle the pressure. And so now we are having to find solutions in automation, in further digitizing, in order for us to be able to handle the demand. People love Jan Riches so much, and Liranda and I are dying. We're snowed under with all of the admin that's involved in that. But this is putting pressure on us to now automate and digitize, and so that we can scale to the level that we need to. So those are part of the challenges that we've experienced.
That is a very good problem to have. And I think in the last part, you've kind of already alluded to this, but I want to know in a bit more detail to say what partnerships or innovations do you see shaping the future of Jan Riches from this point onwards?
So I think before I answer that question, I'd have to give you a little bit of a picture of who is in our Stokvel. What kind of members do we have? So the fact that we are a fully digital Stokvel, which is not conventional in the sense that we also don't meet or do anything like that. So we are a millennial Stokvel and we are digital, which means that we are accessible to a wide variety of people, including, or rather even from an age perspective. So we've got people in their 60s and we've got people in their 20s. Both these groups of people have varying risk appetites. So in order for us to choose the correct product or the correct direction to go to as an avenue or as the next step, it requires us to fully understand the members that we've got, segment them in a way that makes sense, and then only think of the investment avenues that we'd like to go into.
Babustan, please highlight for us what New Calling is about and what are some of the challenges that you have faced over the amount of years that the Stokvel has been in existence. Thank you.
Yeah, for the purpose of the exercise. Yeah, I think in my life I belong to two successful Stokvels. I didn't shy about it, I say it. And I would like to acknowledge my chairperson who is here, Stokvel that I belong to, Morgan Mohani. Yes, I belong to New Calling Club. New Calling it's a German name. In Germany. I belong to the Lutheran Church. So when we formed this Stokvel, because it came from the church choir, we were meeting every Sunday practicing church choir, and after every church choir practices, then we sit for drinks and socialize. And somebody said, why can't we start a Stokvel? That's where the name came from, in brief. But then, successful in a sense, one, we are a barrier society, and we are bearing our families, partners, and extended family members with substantial amount of money. I wouldn't like to brag about it without mentioning the figures. That's one. Substantial amount of money. That's one success of this Stokvel. The second part, because we have so much money, we ventured into business. And the business that we ventured into was an undertaker. We ran an undertaker for about 3 years, but it failed. And there are lessons to why we failed. One, we didn't do enough research into going into an undertaker business. That's one. Two, we stay in Joburg, Soweto. Our undertaker was in Atteridgeville. So the competition and the dynamics in Pretoria Treasury, we did not know them. And that gave us a run for our money. So we were locked up in a, what do you call it, contract, a lease agreement with the landlord, because the mortuary that we operated was someone's mortuary. So we were leasing the building. We were locked up in that lease agreement for a period of 3 years, and business was not coming. The second successful Stokvel that I boast about, that I belong to, is called SVM. I think my wife spoke about it earlier on. SVM. SVM stands for my name, Stanley Busi and Mklatsi. I'm not sure why she's not here. She was supposed to be in here as well. It's SVM. We were sitting chilling one Friday afternoon and talking about, but how can we improve each other?
Yeah.
And because Lucy likes property so much, guys, I tell you so much about property business. And he said, no. Then she started doing research of distressed properties. Here's one. And at the time, we managed to put up money together and we bought the property. We're still owning that property. We put it up for rentals. At the end of every year, we share in dividends. We managed again to buy another second property, not property but to say, but a land in Zanadu Estate in Hartbees. We bought that property, the three of us, successfully so, and we sold it. We owned it and sold it at a very big profit, because Zanadu Estate, it's the place to go to. So yeah, like Lucy mentioned in her speech, sometimes you don't need to be 10 to run a successful Stokvel. The three of us managed it.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the two successful Stokvels that I belong to.
What are the 7 pillars of effective Stokvels, so that we understand, the length at which you go into analyzing some of the Stokvels or cases that you speak about in the book?
Thank you. I think we all are aware that Stokvel's lifespan, it ranges from, could be 1 year, 40 years, like he's been part of Stokvel, others 50 years. And that made me analyze this pattern, and I came up with sustainability. What can Stokvels do to be sustainable? And not just sustainable for the sake of it. Dallas in a Stokvel for 30 years, So that's one important pillar. As you start and join a Stokvel, as you've heard mentioning that, they started the blue collar, they had their highs and lows, but they are still standing. You learn from the failures. So sustainability is one of the important pillars. My advice to anyone, I get inquiries all the time from people who say, how can we start a Stokvel? Actually, when you look at our Stokvel Academy YouTube channel, the one with the highest viewers is the how to start a Stokvel. And it makes you wonder, if that vampires with the Stokvel till today, you get asked how to start a Stokvel. So sustainability is key. Team, it's important. We always simply say Stokvel is about trust, but matata, our team, a Stokvel, the quality team in the Stokvel. That's what makes other people hate Stokvels with passion, because of the problems in terms of lack of, team spirit, within. They started with all the good intentions, but, team. And in companies, people go for team building camps. Why don't you do Stokvel team building? So it's very important for sustainability. And then the organizational structure, as I mentioned, that Stokvel is like a business, and we should also move away from 3 people, but chairman, secretary, and treasurer. Why don't we have other layers, definitely, working committees, because people tend to park and camp for Stokvel. Secretary, treasurer, they do all the work, you see. So you need to actually use those business principles. The other one is knowledge, and this may sound simple. My experience and observation with Stokvels over time, like they get the either we know it all, and they don't know what they don't know. Yeah. And they also don't want to invest in actually getting knowledge. I mean, I was excited a few weeks ago for the first time since I've been part of Stokvels, because the workshops that we run are most of the time sponsored. This time I got a call, and this lady said, hey, we want to start a business, and Marco and I, we used to spend our time traveling, kind weekends visiting Stokvels, but it was not like Bokuhula or Bonontogozo, abantu abadala abanye intanga zethu, but it shows how people are hungry for information even today. So if we could actually get to that stage as Stokvel and say, we need to actually buy knowledge, and invest our time. And the other one, like I mentioned earlier on, give vision. Some Stokvels, they just give Stokvel J, we've been there for years. They can't even articulate their 1 year vision, maybe their vision, sharing my generations, and maybe you are going beyond Gen, you see. So you need to start to have and say, what is our 5-year plan? And guys, it's amazing. I never thought that I would be sitting here today talking about a Stokvel that I joined in 1981, because it's a long time. Sam Justice just mentioned Stokvels that is almost 40 years old. So it shows that it is important to have that, long-term vision, in your Stokvel. And the other one, which I think is a real challenge for Stokvels, there's a bit of a hype in Stokvels, especially when it comes to business. Hey, property Stokvel, hey, this business and franchise, Balisa, but Stokvels don't do explore. You need to explore, you need to research before you just hop into starting a business. Like it happened with their Stokvel. Yes, they did a bit of research, but it was not enough. So exploration is quite, I always make an example about mining. You don't just go and say, I think we need diamond. You see? So there's a lot of work that goes before actually they start mining. So that exploration is important. And finally, one of the most important one is leadership. One of the problems in Stokvels, especially your traditional Stokvels, again, which are started with all the good intentions. Hey, in leadership, Kialiwa, theft, chairman, secretary, treasurer, and these are the things that are hindering the progress in Stokvels. And us as elders, especially those who have been there, I think we need to actually now demonstrate to the younger generation that there is value in Stokvels. Because one of the reasons why the younger generation don't want Stokvels, and his grandmother or her aunt, and say, hey, don't tell me about Stokvels. I'll do my own, say, yeah, exactly,
I'm going to open up for a Q&A shortly. But before I do that, I want to quickly read one of my favorite excerpts from the book, and it is in page 2, the second last paragraph, where Busi says, we have not yet achieved our own economic freedom as a Stokvel community. The struggle persists to ensure that we do not remain trapped in a consumerism or consumerist cycle, which is sustained by our more than 50 billion in elusive savings. We cannot continue to be a lucrative database waiting to be exploited by the owners of the means of production. We generate more than enough wealth to become owners of the means of production ourselves. For me, if there's one paragraph that lends the purpose of the book and also therefore of the author, it is that one, because it truly says that this is a generational mission. Thank you so much, Mambusi. We thank you for this piece of work.
It's learnings of what you had invested in that didn't work out and still went on. And now we've got this story that you are telling now, that people that are not going through the similar journey can literally come and ask you. I literally giggled so much when I read this. But my question to all of you, even if it's just one, what is the one lessons learned in your journeys?
Stokvel members understand the development. She spoke about the digital platforms that are coming through on the investment and so on. So Stokvel members also needs to be taught, educated on what is coming forward, because we're not living in the old times. I've seen my books here in papers. If it was somebody else who was young and vibrant, would be having digital equipment to, tell the story. I also use the papers because I'm from the old school. I can't use the digital platforms, but I know how to use them.
They occupy space in families, and sometimes they find families in distress, and they play a big role. And I'm hearing the money part, and I'm not sure whether it has just moved away from the social matters to just being investment structures and investment companies. I didn't hear much, and I'm sure it's in the book, about the social part. Many of us grow up in places where Abo Mama be Stokvel, Mabe Fikile, they take over, and the children can rest.
Lessons learned from Umam Twafi. Stokvels transcend their roles as financial instruments, emerging as powerful vehicles of personal transformation through collective learnings. So we do touch on that. Thank you. It's very important. It's a pillar. Maybe if I were to actually even say, who else we should be having the social cohesion as part of the sustainability. Thank you.
One of the key pillars or aspects of Stokvels as they started however many years ago, and we've lost it. In fact, there's a yearning for it somehow. It shows. We're just not listening enough. We've got to Iswa in the room. She's part of our Stokvel, and she was like, "We have to meet." And the fact that we have met the first time in 10 years stops here, because that means that I'm going to meet you again in the next 10 years. So we have to find a way to keep it alive. I'm not sure how yet, but I'm glad that it's been raised and I'm acknowledging it.
It does get a bit tricky when you're we're in 8 provinces now. It becomes very difficult to still have that. So I think that's maybe one of the things we need to try and solve for as you grow. How do you keep that social and social element? Yeah, it is quite difficult. You do have ideas, but it's expensive also. So yeah, we're working on it.